I went on and I've been running the business for at that point, 6 years? So I wasn't nervous to talk about the business, right? I was more nervous about the pitch because it was like, if I mess this up, that's going to be on TV. So I had to nail the pitch. After I nailed the pitch, everybody's like, you seem so calm. And I'm like, what is there to be nervous about? They're going to ask me about what I've been doing for the last 6 years. And if they ask me a question that I don't know, then I deserve to kind of be standing there looking like a deer in headlights. And specifically as a business owner, right? An investor, the numbers, right? That's the empirical data that they're looking at to make their decision. So I knew my numbers. I was, ready for the question.
Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this. And it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. Cash is king. And today we're going to chat about that. Growth takes cash, and no one talks about how much cash you need to grow and how growth can bankrupt your business. We'll cover that and more with an experienced entrepreneur who's been through it all and has also been on Shark Tank. We'll dig into some of the metrics you need to measure and help you to understand them. Seneca Hampton is an entrepreneur with multiple 7 to 8 figure businesses, from e-commerce to logistics, consulting, and speaking. He's responsible for over $250 million in sales and touched over 5,000 products in 20 different categories. With over 10 years of digital marketing, sales, and business operation experience, he knows a thing or two about how to build from idea to multi-million-dollar success. He's most known for his appearance on ABC Shark Tank, where he pitched his sports medicine company, Hampton. He demonstrated how he built an online e-commerce business that serves a rapidly growing 600,000 customers and has produced over $15 million in revenue, has 0 employees, and only demands 30 minutes of his time per month, all from scratch with $700 to his name. Let's hear how he did it. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Seneca Hampton. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you for having me, Rocky. Excited to be here.
As am I. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yes. I am the owner of Hampton. We are a sports medicine company, wholly online. I started this company, I want to say we're going on 7 years ago. Before that, I worked in corporate for, 8 years. Started about 22 businesses along the way that all failed. Before I started this one, learned lessons all along the way. And we've been able to scale the business up to about $5 to $6 million a year, depending.
Well, congratulations. And congratulations for keeping going, right?
Thank you.
That is what an entrepreneur does. We just continue to go regardless of whether something works or doesn't. And a lot of times you just have to test out different ideas to see what does or what doesn't work. And then you've got to learn along the way. Or you can just listen to us and then you can skip all the mistakes, right? Learn from other people's mistakes. It's so much cheaper and easier.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually, I credit the success of this business to having the ability to learn from someone else's mistakes. I worked at a company and they were selling about $1 million a year. And I really just tuned in, plugged in, put in 80 hours a week for, I want to say, years. And I invested my time into learning how it worked, the ins and outs of it. So when I started my own, I knew it. I'd done it. I'd learned from their mistakes, the things that worked, the things that didn't. And I was able to build something on my own that I've been able to sustain.
Now, you have one of those experiences that so many people want, or maybe not want, but being on Shark Tank.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was like a roller coaster. I've got so many stories. I mean, I was not going to be on the show multiple times. I got on, I got the opportunity. I didn't want to do it. And I was prodded, hey, you should do it. So I did it. I was supposed to be there at a certain time. I guess someone got the call script wrong. And I was like 12 hours late in a different state. It was a whole story. And then I got there and it was like, it was surreal. I'm standing there looking at the sharks and in my head, I'm seeing the shots on TV as I'm looking at them because I'm like, this is exactly the same shot that I'd see on TV. And I'm like trying to pay attention. It was crazy. And then you come out of it and it's like your adrenaline goes from 300 to, -10. And it's like, whoa, that was intense. A lot of fun though.
It is. I enjoy watching it. And it's interesting to watch people tell their stories. It's interesting to watch what the sharks are looking for and how they connect. And I will say, I think the number one area that I see people struggle with or fumble with is understanding their numbers and being able to present them in a way that makes sense where they're not going, wait a second, the math doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I went on and I've been running the business for at that point, 6 years? So I wasn't nervous to talk about the business, right? I was more nervous about the pitch because it was like, if I mess this up, that's going to be on TV. So I had to nail the pitch. After I nailed the pitch, everybody's like, you seem so calm. And I'm like, what is there to be nervous about? They're going to ask me about what I've been doing for the last 6 years. And if they ask me a question that I don't know, then I deserve to kind of be standing there looking like a deer in headlights. And specifically as a business owner, right? An investor, the numbers, right? That's the empirical data that they're looking at to make their decision. So I knew my numbers. I was, ready for the question, the marketing plan, all of that stuff. I'm like, I've been doing it for a while. So I think I had one question they asked where they stopped and they all of their eyes went up to like the corner and they were calculating. And I was like, oh, they're calculating this to see if I'm actually telling the truth. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
And I think that's the one part that people don't always know is that. And the second thing that I think people aren't always clear on is, here's my initial pitch. What am I willing to walk away with? Mm-hmm. Some of them are very good about knowing, okay, I really want to work with this person. I don't know how many are good at knowing what they're willing to walk away with, and sometimes you'll see them come in and they're not, let's face it, nobody wants to put all their time and effort into a company that they get a couple percentage points on. Yeah. These guys are heavy hitters. So you have to understand coming in, they want a good chunk. And if you're not willing to at least do that, then it's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Before I went in, that was one of the questions that I was kind of throwing back and forth, is that number of what am I willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? And at how much? And the money that comes in initially isn't the value, right, that you're getting from them, quote unquote. It's supposed to be what comes after, right? That's why you bring on an investor. It isn't just for the money, but for what they have in addition to the money. And so what I did is I sat down and I actually did a very realistic valuation. And so I gave the percentage that I thought would be fair. And I'm like, hey, I think this would be fair for what I'm asking. And I know my skill set. I know what I can do. I know what I cannot do. And I know what I need help with. And so I was like, I think this would work. And you heard them on the show. They all said, there's nothing wrong with your valuation. It all makes sense. It all makes sense. But the numbers, again, right? That was their thing. It was the numbers. They were doing the math and they're like, if I invest in this and you're growing at the rate you're growing, that means that I now need to come out of my pocket multiple millions of dollars to keep my initial investment going, or else you're going to go out of business. Right. I mean, we can talk numbers if you like, but that was kind of the logic.
And so what you're basically saying is, in order to grow, you need lots of cash. And the cash may not necessarily come from sales and operations. You need outside cash, and you need to be aware of that. And you need to know there's plus and minuses to all different types of investments. What we've seen a lot of times when businesses grow fast, even if they are profitable, right? Because profit doesn't equal cash. They take the bank loans and then they blow the covenants of the loan. And even though they're growing, and even though they're profitable, the banks yank their cash because they get nervous.
Yeah. They yank that rug right from under you. And now you're, what do I do? And all that quote unquote cash that you had, that's actually, you're probably using it, right? It's probably in inventory, or maybe you hired a new, staff member or some extra people in a certain department or whatever the case is. But that cash that you had is operating. And they're like, yeah, well, we need that back. And it's at that point, I mean, you got two options. 3, you can go get an investor and say, please save me. Right. Or you can, sell through whatever you can to pay them back, or you can just call it quits.
Not the greatest of options. So appropriately growing at a reasonable pace and knowing what the cash needs are is important. So first off, did you take a deal?
I didn't. I was offered a deal. Mr. Wonderful offered me a deal for, I forget what percent. The percentage in the dollar amount. I think he went, $500,000 he wanted to give me. And I think it was for only 3% or something like that. But he wanted $1 on every unit sold. Okay. Now, as a business owner, let me say any person says, $1. And they go, well, what do you sell it for? What's your average cost to sell, like your average sale price? And I'm like, no. That's not how I see that, right? I, in my mind, went to what's my average profit per sale? And then what is $1 of that in percentage? And that's basically the percentage you're giving away every single sale, every single day, every single month. So let's say hypothetically it was 35% of your profit margin you just gave away. 35% of your profit margin, if you turn that into 30, like what is that 35% of your overall profit? Those are solid points that you just gave away for 500. It doesn't make sense. I was like, so I said no. All the sharks are like, I forbid you to take it. And I'm in my head doing math. And I'm like, no, there's no deal in the world. I would never take that deal ever. It was insane. I was grateful for it, but no, it didn't make sense.
Every time Mr. Wonderful does that, I cringe. Because I'm like, oh, you can't do that. Like, because he takes it forever, right? It's not until you're paid back. Mm-hmm. See, some of the other ones will say that, hey, I'll take $1 per unit until you pay my $500,000 back. Yeah. And then so that they want their money back, because that's really what they want. How fast am I going to get my money back? And what's my return on it? It's funny. I never see anyone take a calculator on where they can rip honestly, out a calculator and go.
That's probably the smartest thing to do. I had a job, and it's funny because life kind of takes you in different directions. And I had a boss. I was 20 years old, and I had this boss. He was a CEO. I was his assistant. And he would say all the time, I love numbers. I love numbers. And we'd sit down and I'd be a fly on the wall and I'd just listen to him talk to people. And he'd say, okay, they'd say, oh, we grew by 40%. Everybody's clapping. And he'd go, 40% of what? And they'd stop and everybody look at each other and they go, oh, well, we went from like 8 to 10 or 12, like 12. And he's like, everybody leave the room. And he would just, don't you ever lie to me again. because you just inflated numbers in order to make something. And so he would calculate things in certain ways. And as I got older, I started to be able to calculate percentages very quickly. Multiply, we can all do that. I think percentages in business are very underrated. You see them everywhere, but people don't know how to calculate them instantly, right? And I learned how to calculate percentages really instantly because they matter. And so for me, calculating numbers, percentages, margins, gross margins, operating expenses, all of it to be able to calculate on the fly, investment percentages, right? APR, all that stuff. And I'm like, to be able to do that now has been one of the biggest skills that I've built. But I saw another CEO who had a really big, successful company do it. And I was like, I'm going to glean from that and learn from that.
So business is always a math equation. Either you figure out the math equation or you put somebody on your team to figure it out for you. And you don't make decisions without doing the math.
Yes. I call business what did I call it? I call it the business is the sport of numbers.
Well, and I say this all the time. Would you watch a football game if there was no scoreboard and no clock?
Nope.
No. And yet we run our business with no scoreboard and no clock.
Yeah. That's a recipe for disaster. A recipe. And you know, it's funny. I actually have a story. I started a business. I was 22 and it was a clothing brand. And I worked my butt off. I was on social media and I'm direct messaging people. I'm going to concerts, standing outside, selling these t-shirts. I'm, contacting artists, getting them to wear them and take pictures and promoting. And I'm doing all this work and I'm selling and I'm making and I'm like calculating my margins, quote unquote. We make 30 grand in the first month. And this just goes to the development that I had to go through. I'm 22 years old, about, 12 something years ago. And I spent all the 30 grand on my credit cards. I thought, let me pay off my credit cards now. And it didn't register to me like, no. That money's not for you. It seems so silly now, but then it was like, all this money. Now I can actually get rid of the thing that's stressing me out, which is these credit cards. And you all your cost of goods you just spent, all your profit you just spent, all your taxes you just spent, all of it's gone. Bad decision.
It is. And we talked about that before I hit record. Some business owners will literally suck the cash out of their company because they have a lifestyle that they need to fund that their company cannot fund. And that's where they run into trouble.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to know the numbers, figure out how they work, and do all of those calculations so that.
Yeah. A lot of times, I'll sit down, people ask me, hey, I want to start a business, et cetera, et cetera. And I tell them, if you have no impulse control, if you have no discipline, if you have the ability for you to separate your desires from what needs to happen, you're not going to succeed. Because I'm going to tell you, even having a business that does $5-6 million a year, you look at the bank and you're like, there's all this money. That's not mine. That's the business's money, right? That's not mine to spend, right? You should have calculated what your profit would be. Cool, that's profit, but you need that profit to continue to grow, and it can only stretch so far. So you have a specific portion of that you can allot to yourself, to be able to live, period. Your lifestyle and what your business produce, those have nothing to do with each other. And if you treat them like that, you won't have a business very long.
And that, honestly, that's the magic of profit first. Because every time a dollar comes in, you put it in an account for a specific purpose. So there's my profit account. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm taking it out of the company. Mm-hmm. Here's my pay account. So now I can take my pay out of the company, and here's my operating account, and here's my account to cover my taxes so that I can cover that. I think, I don't think people realize, if you're a good and profitable business, for most people, what I'm finding, and it also depends where you live, but if you add up your pay and your profit, and then you have to pay taxes, like, you almost have to set aside almost half your money to cover taxes. Mm-hmm. And that includes the money you're setting aside to cover taxes, right? Mm-hmm. So if I have a business and I'm putting X towards my profit and then X towards my income, that tax bucket has to be almost half of what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you need you need someone who understands taxes, right? Who understands, okay, this is an operating expense. This is, marketing, right? This is a liability. This is just a repayment of a loan. And there's certain deductions you can and cannot take, right? And so now we're left with this bucket, right, of money that you have to pay taxes on at this percentage at these increments, which add up to X, right? And not to overcomplicate it. It's not complicated at all.
No.
It's just like we said before we started, right? People like to operate. They like to do what they like in their business. And numbers and accounting and all that, I'll just hire somebody. I don't want to deal with it, right? But that person who's doing that, they're getting paid because you're going to pay them for their hours or whatever the case is. You're responsible. So they're just going to give you, hey, this is what the mirror looks like. Wait, what? This is why you have to understand what you're doing. So when you ask them to help you, right, they're helping you to what end? You have an understanding. You might not have the technical understanding of like how to actually do it with your hands, but you have an understanding where you can go, okay, I've got this plan and I'm working through it. And now I bring on an expert to help me. And the expert's like, okay, cool. You're doing great, but here's some of the details you're missing, right? And here's some of the things that I can do to, oh, wow, thank you so much. We're on the same page. Wonderful. But if you bring somebody on to help you, you don't know anything that's going on. It will sound like foreign language to you. It'll sound like, like somebody's trying to take something from you or they don't understand what's going on when it's just perspective, right? So I like to tell, and even myself, I'm like, learn. Learning is the biggest asset you have, your brain. Learn. If you run a business, you should be a jack of all trades, master of none. You can have one, cool, but you should understand specifically even finance. It's imperative if you have a business. You cannot have a business and not understand it. System error doesn't compute. Doesn't make sense. And
that's correct. I think what happens too often is people don't understand the financial roles of the people that they're bringing in. Mm-hmm. So a tax accountant is not going to help you be profitable. Mm-hmm. Like it's the antithesis of what they do. Your bookkeeper may or may not comment on what is going on in your business. And they may be recording stuff from 60 days ago, which is really nice, but that's not going to help you 60 days from today. Mm-hmm. And some of them have the skill sets to look forward. Most people in the finance industry are looking backwards. They're a rear view mirror. They're a projection of what happened. They're not helping you take the next step and show you what's happening going forward, and I don't know how a lot of these businesses actually, because I don't get into the weeds. But like I know with my business, I can tell you what my cash flow is for the next 30 or 45 days forward. Like I can just look at my systems and go, okay, we're going to need X amount of money here. I'm going to need money there. We need to plan and be prepared for that. Oh, that's okay because all the money's going to come in here. So I'm cool. I don't think a lot of business owners do that. I think they're much more reactive or they're just looking at their bank balance, which I get, But if you aren't forward planning, you're going to get punched in the face occasionally.
Yeah. I used to have a job and I worked for this guy and he was a salesman, right? Sales is, and let me just stand on the soapbox really quick. One of the things that bothers me is when people say that they don't want to sell. I don't like sales. I don't want to do sales. Every single business in the world is in the business of sales. So to say that you don't want to sell is saying that you don't want a business. Oh, well, I just like doing the creative part, but I want to own it. Okay. You can see that's a dichotomy. That doesn't, you have to, right? You have to. But this guy, he was an amazing salesman, horrible at cash management, $20 to $30 million a year in services and never looked at his P&L, never looked at his balance sheet, only looked at his bank account.
Yeah, that's normal.
That to me is system error. And I'm like, and so the accountant in the office, right, she understood how to read a profit and loss statement and how to read a balance sheet. And she would bring it to him and say, hey, you're taking way too much money out of here. And his response, don't tell me how to run my business. And she's like, I get my check. I'm fine. I'm trying to help you. I want you to succeed. And you're taking too much, right? You're taking more than we're making. And we have a lot of, I think a lot of business owners do this. We all use credit cards as a business, right? If you're not using credit cards as a business, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know who you follow or what they say. I think credit cards are a great way to give you time to float the cash. You never use them as a way of bridging a gap that you never could fill in the first place, right? So I get it. Use a credit card. Cool. You want to float the cash so that you can get more cash, right? In case anything comes up. I get it. Cool. But they were using their credit card in place of cash. That's a recipe for bankruptcy. Right? And I watched it. I eventually left because I saw that. And that was one of the reasons why I left. It had nothing to do with the culture. It had nothing to do with the company. It was just like the way the cash is being managed around here. I don't think that my salary is safe. So I'm going to go somewhere else.
And again, you have to look at the people and their mentality. A salesperson's mentality is, if there's no money in the bank, I'll just sell something, which worked well until COVID hit. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute, I can't sell something today. They made me close. Or life happens, whether it be supply chain, whether it be health, whether it be any number of things, right?
Yes. Can I tell a quick story really quick? So COVID, we manufacture and we import, goods from all over the world. COVID hit. When COVID hit before the inflation, it would cost about $2,000 to $4,000 to import a container. You see these containers on the back of these semi trucks, right? They're driving around the country carrying goods. Well, before they're on a truck, they're on a boat. That boat crosses the Atlantic or the Pacific, right? Wherever the case is. These big freighters. Well, it only costs about $2,000 to $4,000 to get a container. When COVID hit, the demand for goods went up so high that the cost to get a container went up to $30,000. Okay, let's break that down, right? Let's say you have 1,000 units of whatever you sell inside of this container. Well, your cost of goods just went up by 30,000 divided by 1,000 units. That quick, just like that. Oh, I didn't account for that. Let me go get a loan. Right? Problem. That's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. The point of the story is this, is when that happened, because it happened to me too, I had to adjust. I had to pivot, right? And so how do I continue to maintain my cost of goods without them surging, which eats into my profit, right? Okay. Well, I can't do, they're called, LTLs, right? Which is not an LTL, but, it's not a full container. It's the acronym.
Yeah. It's less
half
than
a container.
Truckload. Yeah.
Right. So we can't do that. We have to do a full one, right? So we have to do a full one. And not only do we have to do a full one, we have to make sure that when we pack it, we're packing it where we have our boxes. We need to make our boxes smaller so that we can fit more units. You're trying to optimize the size to spread that cost around the units. Then the trucking went up just to get the goods from the port to the warehouse, right? Okay. I need to figure out, right, the best solution, the cheapest truck, the fastest one. And then getting the product off of the truck and into the hands of the customer. That timeline went from, it was 7 days to 3 months.
And so if you think about this, right, you're just talking about the cost of the shipping and the container and the transportation. But now here's what my business has got hit with. I now have to figure out 83 days of cash flow that I didn't have to figure out before, because now my money isn't coming back for 90 days.
Yes. And that right there is what put a lot of people out of business, right? Is not only one, pivoting, right? People say, oh, pivot, start a new thing in your business. That's not all that means. You got to turn to your numbers first and see what's the impact that this is going to have. And so for me, it was, okay, it's going to take me 3 months now to get a product, additional 3 months to get a product into the hands of a customer versus the 7 days. Okay, well, how do I float that gap of 83 days, right? How do I float that gap? And so that's where you have to adjust your pricing, right? You have to adjust your marketing. You have to adjust wherever you have operating expenses that may not be necessary, or maybe you're spending too much. But there's all of that stuff that kind of goes into keeping yourself afloat. And we got through the pandemic. One of our products lended itself to like the medical field. And so that product kind of took off. And so we were able to increase the price point on that by about 32%, right? Nothing crazy, but it helped to be able to bring in more cash flow to kind of supplement the company as it moved forward. And then we were able to kind of reduce inventory sizes, which reduced the cost to hold the goods, right? There's a lot of math that goes into it, but it took the ability to look at the numbers and understand the numbers, right? Even if I didn't have a Rocky, right, on my side, right? I think you guys actually have a course that you sell. That information is so crucial because it'll help you to keep the business that you put your heart, blood, and soul and effort into alive when stuff like that happens, right? Or even being able to seize an opportunity. You were telling me about a company that was selling on Costco and how difficult that is, right? You think you grow your business. Oh, we're going to grow. We just got this whatever for $4 million. Okay. Let's say your cost of goods is 25% of that 4 million. Where are you going to get that $1 million from? And how often do you need to keep those shelves stocked? There's more money that comes in. Where's that coming from? Right? It's not, you can't just do what you like. You got to do what you need to do.
You do. And I think a big part of that is thinking through every single component. So it's not just what's the container cost. It's how do I repackage my product to make it more viable? So I will tell you something because these people upset me. It's Apple. And when you buy a $800 phone today, you know what you don't get in the package?
Headphone?
Charging block.
Oh, that's so true.
Do you know why there's no charging block? This is my opinion of why there's no charging block in there.
No, why?
If you take the charging block out of the box shrinks by half. The thickness drops dramatically. Right? Now you don't have, your box is thinner. I can ship more and more stuff in a smaller container. And it changes the game. And there's only so much you can do with the outlet because just, you have to fit it to the standard American size. And by the way, they got in trouble. Some country fined them for selling an incomplete product or something. So,
oh, wow.
America doesn't help us as much with that kind of stuff as foreign countries do. But I think that's a big part of what happened. It was all about package size and being able to shrink and ship overall. Yeah.
I think if we were able to simplify it, it would be what's the additional cost now that's added to me, and what am I missing during that 90 days per unit, and where am I going to get that from? And that's, if you can solve for that X, you did a good job. But I think a lot of people couldn't see the equation, and it kind of caught them by surprise.
And I think for most business owners, I think they can solve for X. However, what happens more often than not is when you get punched in the gut, you can't breathe.
Yeah.
And so all you're thinking about is air. You're not thinking about anything else. And that's where I think it becomes the most important thing to do is to take the time to breathe and to think. And the more you start to think, you'll figure out solutions. But you need to do that. Now, what we're doing right now, because everyone's screaming recession, we're building recession plans so that when we get punched in the gut, we go, what are we supposed to do? Well, we created a plan when we were breathing. Let's go take a look at it and see what it says. Where can I make cuts? Where can I make changes? How are we going to market? So our recession plan is changing our marketing, right? Instead of offering a premium product, we got a stripped down product. So value price at the low end instead of, the top end. So you're figuring out how to make things differently and how to play it. And unfortunately, and this is going to be funny in the future, we went to buy ice cream during Thanksgiving. They used to be half gallons. Then they were 48 ounces. The last one was 44 point something ounces. They didn't even tell the ounces. They just said like 1.5 liters or something. So they pulled another 3 ounces out of the ice cream. At some point, it's going to get down to the pint size. Now, what do you do when a half gallon's the size of a pint?
Wow.
And this is, you have to know what's going on around you. And all of these people are playing this game. They're changing formulations. And you have to be ethical with it. Because if you're
Yeah.
not ethical, you're going to get hammered on the other side
Yeah.
because you made your product too cheap
Mm-hmm.
and now nobody wants it. And they're not
I
going
have
to tell you. They're just going to stop buying it.
I have a friend who did that, and his product was made too cheap, and it cost him. He had a great product. It was a quality product, and he kept trying to get the cost down, lower and lower and lower and lower and lower, until eventually, and it was like it was a beverage product. It started leaking. Everything was leaking. Put him out of business.
Yeah,
and it's chasing that, right? To your point, right? You got to be ethical with it. And I think during a recession, one of the things that is counterintuitive, when there's a recession, everybody's kind of tightening their coin purses, right? And that includes businesses. And one of the places they tighten up is their marketing. And that literally might be your gap to come into the market, to advertise, to get more recognition, right? Your name known and all that. You got to make sure that you got a great product and an amazing offer that people actually want to buy during the time of recession. But the cost to advertise goes down. That might be a time for you, if you've had a plan, to take advantage of that, to jump in and go, hey, the cost to advertise is down, 1x. I can get twice the amount of advertising, right, out of it that I could before. If I adjust my price or whatever the case is, if I can increase that conversion rate, it starts to make sense where I can continue to spend more on advertising than I was before something like a recession.
One of the things we've actually done is for our clients where it's appropriate, we've gone back to postcard advertising.
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper than social media advertising, and you can target better than they can.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to keep pivoting and making those changes. The other thing we've taught is, just like you said, businesses are looking to cut costs. So rather than looking downstream and saying, I have to cut costs for my current businesses, we tell them to look upstream and go, hey, who's the guy ahead of you, more priced? Go after his business.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they're like, oh, we got to cut costs, and he might not be willing to. Now you're going upstream instead of downstream.
Yeah. Especially with that shipping and all, and that trucking and all those, a lot of businesses currently, even I think, was it Apple or Nike? I forget which company it was, but it was on CNBC where their margins had come down significantly because of the cost that the increase in shipping and trucking, right? And so a lot of these companies now are sitting with, products that have a higher cost of sale. Right? It's going to cost more to sell. The cost of goods are just higher. Some light at the end of the tunnel. We got through the $30,000 container days, and I'm happy to say that the cost for containers are now back to $4,000. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, what does this now mean for the future? Because before, I think this COVID hit was that March of 19 or March of 20? Okay. It hit March of 20. The cost went up, I want to say June, right, of 20. And we're in 2022. So we didn't see inflation start to hit until this year, right? And now I'm looking and I'm going, oh, wow, the cost of actual products that we use of goods to ship them in and the trucking have come back down to normal levels, right? Or slightly above, but they're not at 30,000, they're at 4. So I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, things in the coming years as my indicator. And what do I know? I'm looking at it and going, okay, well, the cost to buy things will eventually come down, but companies are going to need to make that up during this time, right? So I'm not sure it'll happen right away, but I'm hopeful.
And I think a lot of that was because a lot of the big companies right now have so much excess inventory. They're not bringing in anything else. They're trying to get rid of it. So again, it's constant pivoting. It's constant awareness.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who, especially in the home building, whose contracts did not allow for them to change prices that COVID hammered on them. And I had builders going to closings with checks because they actually lost money on the house. It was that bad. So always being flexible, pivotable, knowing your inputs, what's happening to them, and constantly keeping on track of this. Now, all of this stuff takes time. Just out of curiosity, how many hours a week do you work?
Per week?
Yeah.
I feel like saying an hour would be an overstatement.
You work an hour a week and you run a $5 to $6 million business.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Systems, processes.
The one
Systems,
thing
processes.
most businesses don't want to put in place, I keep telling them, you've got to create systems and processes.
Yeah, I think one of the rules that I live by is there's a principle called Pareto's principle, right? And it's the 80-20 rule. It's probably another way that people have heard it, right? 20% of what you put in affects 80% of the output. When you sit down and you look at your business and you look at what really drives the end result of it, right? And I'm just going to be honest, and people might not like it, but I'm going to tell the truth here. It's profit. It's revenue and profit. That's what business owners care about. Right? Oh no, well, I care about, whatever the case is. You'd have started a nonprofit if you did. It's a for-profit business, so you care about profit. And so when I look at the entire scope of how does my product, whether it be digital, whether it be physical, whether it be a service, whatever it is, how does that get from creation to customers' hands? What does that look like? Where does it cost the most time or money? And is there a way for me to systematize parts of that? Because you're going to reduce 80% of the work and time that go into it. And then it goes. So one of the things that I heard from one of my bosses, I've had like 3 bosses and I learned a lot from them, all of them CEOs. He would say, money follows vision. Vision doesn't follow money. And whenever my vision follows money, I'm constricted. So I took that with me. And what I do is I look at the vision of what do I want to do? And then I figure out how to make the cost work after the fact, right? And so if I look at the process and I go, okay, I've got to source a product, I've got to find a manufacturer, we've got to brand it, right? We've got to mess with the formula, create a new project, whether it's CAD files, whatever it is. How do I create a process for that removes me from it as cheaply and efficiently as possible? And I start working on that equation. And then we go, okay, we got to ship it. We got to get it here. It's got to go to a warehouse. It's got to be sorted. It's got to be shipped. Okay, what can I put in place? And when I say process, I don't mean that it's something you have to do. You could outsource it. Example, I got to make sure that my books are done every month or quarter. Hey, Rocky.
I don't do
right?
that.
Yeah, right. You don't, but I would say, hey, do you know anybody that could do that? And he'd go, oh yeah, I know a few bookkeepers and CPAs that'd be really helpful with that. Great. I'm going to set up a call with them and set up a system or a process or a schedule where they're handling that. And I sit down with them whenever I need to go over the information instead of me, solopreneur, entrepreneur, whoever, going, let me sit down and do all my books and blah, 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 whatever the case is. I'm trying to give some examples of where people can do that, but it's just zooming out, looking at the whole picture, looking at where's all your time spent. And can that be done by something or someone else? And what is the cost to do it? And how fast can it get done? And trying to figure out X and solving for it. So that way you remove yourself. And I've done that with this business, where, yeah, I mean, today would be considered work. So I don't know. Talking to Rocky here would be considered work. So here's 30 minutes. But hopefully there's some nuggets in there that people can take out.
And I'm sure there are. If people would like to learn more about you and what you do, what's the best way for them to check you out?
So I used to have a job when I was younger, managing social media. After that, I was just turned off to it. But again, it's one of those things you have to do, right? Doesn't matter what you want to do. But people can find me on social media, Instagram at Seneca Hampton. If they want to come say what's up. I've got a couple of videos on YouTube, same at Seneca Hampton on YouTube. Come say hi, say what's up. If I can respond, I will. But no services, nothing I'm offering, nothing crazy like that.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for having me, Rocky. I appreciate it.
He works an hour a week with systems and processes. Did you catch that? Maybe it's not possible in your business, but how can you work half as much as you do now and still maintain the same profit, if not double it? That's the money question. Work half as much, make twice as much. At the end of the day, you have to know the numbers and track them. Again, someone else can prepare them in a way you want because you're in charge. Your business is a math equation. Figuring out the levers is important so you can work on them and be more profitable and ensure you have the cash you need to grow. Don't forget, have a recession plan in place so if we go into a downturn, you know what to do. You don't need more resources. You need to be more resourceful. And that's what we talked about today. Let's remember to focus on the bottom line.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your Chief Profitability Officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Remember to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about how to live the ultimate life and be the best business owner you can be. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.